But how do we bring in that ability and that agility that says this is the responsiveness that we need in order to make sure that our people are being used as the skill set and that we're not importing the skill from elsewhere in the world. One amazing thing about Salesforce is you don't need to have a degree. You don't need to have any kind of tertiary. One of the things that South Africa has to solve, and what we do have to get right, is how we solve for credentials, which is one part of the equation, but legitimate work experience that goes along with that.
Indeed. I'm Matthew Burbidge, and I'm very happy to be talking to Ursula Fear today, who is responsible for increasing the number of people with Salesforce skills in Africa. Welcome, Ursula.
Thank you for having me.
She's been working in the skills area for over 2.5 decades. In growing these Salesforce skills, her strategy is to concentrate her efforts on schools, universities, partners, customers, as well as digital skills initiatives in South Africa. Salesforce is a US cloud-based software company, and anyone who's been to San Francisco will know that you can navigate the city by its massive downtown building. Salesforce is in the business of customer management software and is focused on sales, customer service, marketing, automation, e-commerce, analytics, and application development. It is now 25 years old and has a market cap in the region of $275 billion. The founder and CEO is Mark Benioff, and he's still in charge. It's been estimated that the Salesforce ecosystem will create 9.3 million new jobs and over $1 trillion in business revenues worldwide by 2026. It announced in June 2023 that it is looking to generate locally 92 billion rand in new business revenue by 2026, and also is planning on creating 31,000 new jobs. Obviously the skills, you need a lot of skills to implement your solutions. But I mean, maybe you should just tell me a bit about those skills that you're looking for.
I think most importantly, for me is that Salesforce presents enormous opportunity for us as South Africans. So when we talk skills for Salesforce, the one thing we need to be very cognizant of is that this thing keeps moving and is changing continuously. So we have, we've got 3 releases a year, as I like to sometimes describe it. Let's say our curriculum, in a crazy kind of way, changes every 4 months. And so when we talk about this type of skills that we require, it really is about, certainly having the responsiveness to the skills and that ever-changing, sort of machine that we start to see from a Salesforce perspective. So the one thing I think we certainly understand from a digital skill perspective in South Africa is that the jobs exist. The skill sets that we require don't. And I suppose that's what our focus is how do we create and how do we, from a strategy point of view, create awareness of Salesforce. Not many people know what Salesforce is, certainly at the schools, university levels. How do we grow good, implementation partners, so people that implement the software? How do we make sure that we've got the best skills in that regard? And how do we enable our customers to have a bench strength of Salesforce skills that helps them to manage themselves in a particular way so that they can obviously get the return on investment that they require?
Okay, so just break it out for me. So you say there's not much, you don't have much, kids in school don't know what Salesforce is. But I mean, so, you obviously work through your partners. Okay, so you're a partner-led organizer, like you implement through your partners. Yeah. So on the one hand, so I'm a kid out of school, say, and then can you train me to do that? If you help
The
skills?
one amazing thing about Salesforce is you don't need to have a degree. You don't need to have any kind of tertiary. I think going to the point of it's continuously evolving. Unfortunately, sometimes what we find is that tertiary institutions are not moving as quickly as we need them to. So everybody's welcome. Everybody's welcome to Salesforce. You don't need to have, any kind of tertiary credentials behind your name. The most important thing, I think, is for you to be successful in the Salesforce machine is that ability to have that learning agility and to move with the advancements and the continuous innovation that we see.
So I'm still that newly finished school kid, and then or young person, and then I'll do the training online, and this is on your CRM. You'll start off on the CRM software.
Yeah, so we've got our learning experience platform is called Trailhead, which it's free of charge. So whether I'm interested in studying soft skills, whether I'm interested in studying AI, whether I'm interested in becoming a certified administrator or a developer, all of that content is for free. Obviously, we have certification vouchers that go along with that. But I think the important point around that is that the access is there. And so we also gamify a lot of the learning experience. We've got different rankings and we've got badges, and as you achieve certain badges and certain points, you qualify at a certain rank. One of our key ranks that we sort of promote is to become a ranger, which is 50,000 points and 100 badges. It's just like a metric, a universal metric. It's not like everybody's got to study the same thing. You are able to venture into this incredible world, of so many different choices. And so as a school leaver, for example, I can find what we call trails or trail mixes is our analogy or our wording for little modules or micro learning, little, bite size of learning. I can search for things that are going to be applicable to me as a school leaver. If I am an experienced person in a particular field, I can do a search and I can find things that are of interest to me that will help me acquire and to do those skills in that regard. So I think for me, what's very exciting is that, as I say, everybody is welcome and it is there and the access is there. But one of our challenges as South Africa is access to internet, is access to devices.
I'm going to come to that now. I actually just saw today that Mark Benioff failed his Ranger certification the other day. So, but I'm sure he's got bigger. He's got a few other things. He's got to run the company.
He's got to do it in a certain amount of time.
Okay, so just to get into that now, as you were saying, so just the one question I did have for you is, how many customers do you have in South Africa, roughly?
Roughly, the exact number, I'm going to come back to you on that.
In the hundreds or?
Thousands.
Yeah, okay.
Thousands.
And from big to small? Huh?
So from small to medium size to big enterprises. And remember, we've also got a whole world, which is called Salesforce.com, which is our nonprofits.
Okay.
So Salesforce basically has something which is called a 1-1-1 model. 1% of our equity, 1% of our revenue, 1% of our product is given, and time is given to the greater good. So nonprofits, you'll find there's an enormous amount of nonprofits that utilize Salesforce to obviously help specifically, obviously funding and all of those things from a nonprofit perspective. But that's run through our one entity, which is Salesforce.org. And the other amazing thing is every single one of us, whoever works for Salesforce, is expected to contribute to society, and that is basically 7 days of our work year must be done in community service.
Benioff's a good guy. I've heard some interviews with him, and he's certainly not a tech bro, and he makes himself available for interviews, and he's got a kind of, I suppose a company's led from the top.
Yeah.
And he does seem to be a man with some acumen. But so that question, that figure I mentioned earlier, that you want to create 31,000 new jobs by 2026. Do you think that the local ecosystem can support that? And how did you arrive at that figure?
So it was an independent report that was done by IDC. And interesting enough, the 9.3 million global jobs that was reported by the IDC, there's new stats that were reported on in Dreamforce now in September 23. And the 9.3 has jumped to 11.2 million new jobs. And that's because of the impact of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And obviously, but bringing it down to a South African perspective, I think as I alluded to earlier, with the Salesforce engine that keeps, with all of this incredible innovation, 25 years of innovation, and that just keeps going. We have no shortage of the opportunities, whether it's, roles in our customer base, whether it's roles in our partner base. It is about having the right fit-for-purpose skills in terms of what we need so that we can obviously have that return on investment. Now, what's interesting is, and I think, you could be talking to any of the OEMs or any technology partner. One of the things that South Africa has to solve, and what we do have to get right, is how we solve for credentials, which is one part of the equation, but legitimate work experience that goes along with that.
Indeed.
So we're not going to grow if I just, if we've got this thing, let's grow 10,000 of those and let's make sure we've got 10,000 people certified. That's not enough. And it goes back to this continuous, movement that we're starting to see. But I think what we have to solve for as a country, if digital skills is going to be one of our biggest economies that it can be, we need to solve for how we actually legitimately grow experience, and that's on-the-job experience with our skills.
So then, that 31,000 jobs, how did you come to? I mean, did you look at the kind of number of customers that you have here, their potential to grow, and I
think it's the entire ecosystem. So IDC did it on an entire sort of analysis of what the impact in the ecosystem, which I suppose is all Salesforce role players, and what that impact could potentially be.
All right. So then, we've got youth unemployment running at over 55%, depending on how you count that.
Yeah.
And I wondered what you would say as to why that is the case. I mean, why do you think I think Gaza has a better employment rate among the youth than we do, so
it's catastrophic.
Why do you think we're in such a parlous
Well, look, I think it starts way back from our, job reservation policies that South Africa had in the apartheid era of restricting maths and science and, all of those diabolical things. And I think, we've got to get to a point where our education system is providing a level of readiness of what we require within our school system. And, pass marks and, all of those kind of things is very important, And I think as we start to look at this new world of work, or the now world of work, what do we need to do as a nation to prepare our children to be fit for purpose?
Well, what do we need to do, would you say?
Well, I think we certainly got to start to bring, sort of this world of employment a lot closer to what the education system is producing, and how and what we require. And when you start to look at our regulatory infrastructure that provides a platform of how we produce skills, there's some work that needs to be done. So I'll give you an example. If we just look at, how it can take 5 years to register a qualification. And when you got, I used the example of Salesforce earlier, where we've got 3 releases a year, every 4 months. Our curriculum is changing and it's updated. how do we bring those two worlds together? So you can't have, certain qualifications that are still teaching people to use a floppy drive or a fax machine. We've got to get relevant in terms of what we teach and how we teach. I personally have a view that every single one of us has in a way been a little bit complicit to unemployment, be a business, be a learner, be it government. Everybody, I think South Africa has got a particular narrative of how we've done skills, where a lot of it has been compliance on our scorecards, and we've got to start to sit up and we've got to start to have a vigorous attitude around what fit for purpose looks like. And so it means the voice of business has got to be very loud. The voice of government has got to be very loud in terms of coming together, in terms of solving together. And we can't, we all can't work off our own islands. We have got to see this collaboration that is going to talk to what we need in this day and age.
Do you have any customers among the public sector in South Africa?
No, not at the moment.
Not at the moment.
Yeah.
The one initiative that you have got behind is the Collective X.
Yeah.
And maybe you can just tell us a little bit about how you've partnered up with them and what they're doing as you understand it.
I think the Collective X is, as we know, it's an intermediary, it's a representative of the private sector. And I suppose that's the lobbying, instead of all of us running on our own, we've got a centralized point that we could use through Collective X that can go and have these strategic conversations with government on behalf of us. One of them is, how do we produce or how do we have a regulated training infrastructure, recognize what we need to do in terms of building fit-for-purpose skills. So if we have learnerships that, you can have a learnership or have a duration, qualifications have a duration of 5 years. How do we bring in that speed that says we have to measure? And that's very right of what government is doing and SAQA and the NQF and all of these, all of our institutions, absolutely. But how do we bring in that ability and that agility that says this is the responsiveness that we need in order to make sure that our people are being used as the skill set and that we're not importing the skill from elsewhere in the world.
Yeah.
And that's what Collective X, I believe, is going to be doing, is it's this intermediary, it's a non-profit. I think you've got some incredible, private sector, sort of kudos behind it. And I think, with the likes of Imiteto, who's the chairman, passionate about, skills, he's also very busy with ESCOM. I think we will start to see some of that change. I'm very encouraged by what I have seen. And I think there's this maybe there's a timing, I think, that maybe maybe the timing is right. But I think, as I feel very strongly, and that's why the collective, as in its naming, is so important. It's not for one part of the party to solve. We all have to equally sit around a table and say, actually, how do we do this? It's not just government, it's not just business, it's everybody has to change mindsets so that we can obviously arrive at the place that we need to, so that we're not importing, all the skills that we require. We've got great people here.
And I mean, the one thing I was quite impressed by when I went to the offices of Harambee, which has a tie-in with the Collective X, there was this kind of work experience, which I found very powerful. They had BMW and I think it was ABSA. So they would train these youngsters up kind of in a dev environment at the Harambee offices.
Correct.
Are you going to be doing anything like that?
Yeah. So, one of the things that we have kicked off is it's called the Dundee Digital Skills Hub.
Dundee.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Dundee is what we call a tier 3 town, 66% unemployment. And one of the things that I really want us to try and do with this Salesforce umbrella is how do we really impact through skills? How do we have skills development models that actually create economic hub models? So this project's been going now for about 6 months. What is it? So we've got a tier 3 town. We have selected we've got a...
This is Dundee in
KwaZulu-Natal.
yeah.
Okay. We've got a workforce development partner. So that's an important mechanism for us in terms of net new talent. So Salesforce has created, and we do this globally. We've got, in our world, to probably look at it as a training provider. A workforce development partner is basically strategically put in place to assist us with growing net new talent. So we've, at the moment, we've got 11 in South Africa, and I've got about 3 for Africa. And that means we work with these training institutes so that we can, A, help with the quality of Salesforce tuition, but also we can bring in what we know from our customers, from our partners, etc., and we can put that into the mix. So it's not that we create an infrastructure which is called workforce development partners and, throw them over there and hope for the best. We are actively involved in solving this issue with them. And here comes the Dundee Digital Skills Hub. So we've got a workforce development partner, which is called Paladin. And we've also, Paladin has partnered with the Umzingeti municipality in KZN with the ETIA division, which is the economic development, tourism, and economic affairs. And basically what that part of the government is doing is how do we actually look at digital hubs in smaller towns? Why a tier 3 town? The cost of labor is a lot cheaper. And how do we also find a mechanism to keep the revenue in the town? So the first thing we wanted to prove was that you got good talent in a tier 3 town. And we said, well, I'm sure we're going to find some great talent. But let me tell you what we found. I found computer science, Golden Key Society degreed. We found marine biologists. We found historians. We found teachers. We found public administrators. Tertiary qualification, people just couldn't get work. What happened is they came back home. And so we set up, I franchised for the first time first time we're doing it in South Africa. It's called a Pathfinder program, where my American counterparts were very much part of the training of Salesforce. Each of the students gets 2 certifications, associate and an administrator certification. And we also had global mentors. So we've had mentors from all over the world that have then, have been put into this program so that there's that knowledge transfer and that VTO, we call it VTO, our voluntary time off, though, that we've incorporated into this model. And
so was it in person or did they come?
It was in person.
Okay.
The mentors are based around the world,
Sure.
that was done virtually. But there's literally a physical space where the students come.
Where is that?
It's in the one street of Dundee. So it's got.
And did you hire that place?
No, that was we've basically been, there's opportunity of work in the Salesforce space. That's why we've worked very closely with this project. And what we started to see is that we're now looking at the little pieces of work that we've managed, that we've actually managed to, that's been able to come to fruition, including an agriculture meat company in the area that is about to utilize Salesforce. And so there's a process now that we could potentially use these guys and girls to service from a Salesforce point of view in the hub. And
that's a good news story.
Yeah, it is. And it's because we have to solve for experience.
Exactly.
I don't want us to be known, as another big OEM that has, flooded the market with thousands and thousands of certified people. But are we going to have thousands and thousands of people that just have a certification getting work?
Yeah.
And the reality is we need to think out of the box. And that's why this was such an interesting thing for us, because, the art or the possibility of us actually replicating that model is very much there, So it's a great story. Interesting, what I also very strongly believe that we need in order to solve these digital skills issue in South Africa is we need leadership on another level. And I say on another level. We need leadership that is going to be 100% committed to doing different when it comes to skill creation and when it comes to growing jobs. And it means that we've got to unshackle. I often use the word unshackle to say, how do we throw away the old thinking and how do we come up with a new courageous thought process that we require in order to live the potential that South Africa has?
Well, we can't do any worse. I mean, we're starting off a hell of a low base. So, anything that we do is going to be great.
Yeah.
But that's a good news story. I mean, maybe we should have you been there.
Yes.
You must take us down.
I'll send you some.
Me and Les can go down. No, we can do the ITWeb on the road. ITWeb TV on the road.
Okay.
We'll come down and look at that.
Well, you're welcome, because what's happening there is we've got a TVET college a few doors down.
Okay.
Now we want to have some intervention with the TVET college to say, can we focus on, making sure that there's one form of digital skill that is enabling the community. And interesting lessons, okay? So the first thing I made the comment earlier around access to internet and access to a device. So when I went down, I like to sort of do a little bit of a, one-on-one and sort of group conversation. We're gathering information. So I asked, the one thing we discovered is because of the security, the kids only had access to their laptops in the day. And despite that, there were some incredible accomplishments that we started to see. So I said, we're going to have to change that, because we're going to need to make sure that, the students actually have access continuously to a device.
Can you do it on your phone?
You can, yeah, absolutely. Okay. You can do it on your phone. But it's, it was just a matter of changing the insurance policy and we've sorted that out. But here's another interesting thing. So one of our customers is Vumatel. And as I was going around the circle and, how are you and what have you got and what are your constraints or what do you need? So it came out that half of the group had access to internet at home and half didn't. Now, what was so powerful is that they have got access to Vumatel, which is internet in their homes, which is an initiative by Vumatel to obviously put connectivity into townships. And it was so amazing to just be sitting there and going, wow, that's just so phenomenal that, you've got so many great initiatives that we have in South Africa, sort of blend away into, and here you've got a story of where you are actually seeing the impact in a place like Dundee, And I actually got one of the students to write a little bit of a story and even took pictures, so that we can actually share with Vumatel to say, look, your good work is actually doing incredible things. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just that's another good news story. So thanks very much, Ursula. I didn't have any other questions. I mean, I just suppose we'll have to get you back here in a year and just see how much you've done.
The other interesting thing or other project, again, our workforce development partners becoming quite an important catalyst for us, is Capacity, which is also in Braamfontein. We've got an initiative with them to train 100 young women, predominantly women, in Salesforce. But here's the deal, in businesses that are no more than 200 people.
Okay, so small businesses.
So Capacity has also, they've actually been probably one of our longest standing workforce development partners. They did an initiative with Accenture 3 years ago now called Skills to Succeed, had 100% employment there. They've also had 100% employment with a program at ABSA. And now we've got this initiative, small partners, small businesses that need skills. Here is an intervention of where we actually want you to take on and wanting to support small business in that regard.
I do have another question. What are you seeing adoption in wider Africa? And are you in charge of that as well?
Yeah, so we work, So I'm calling, 85% of our revenue comes out of South Africa.
Sure.
But certainly what we're seeing is the countries are popping. So one of the things that...
Where?
So we've seen certainly Nigeria, Kenya.
Yeah, those are the three.
Ghana is also one of our focus areas. And Mauritius. What I have to also solve for is the readiness of skills as we sell. So there's one thing to say, use this incredible, fantastic platform, and then you go into these different territories and the skills are indeed limited. So, and again, here comes the role of workforce development partners again, that can help us work simultaneously with our customers and our new customers that we're bringing on board, with our new partners that we're bringing on board, to say, can we work together so that we can start to see quality skills coming into the market? And one of the things I'm also very passionate about is not just focusing on year one. What happens in year two?
Sure.
What happens in year three? So I'll actually say, if you woke me up in the middle of the night and said, what does your job involve? My job involves growing local depth and breadth so that we can have local specialization. And that's the mind shift that I also sort of allude to all the time is, yes, there's one thing about, getting somebody into a technology space, irrespective of what it is. But we have to start to think of career pathing. We have to start to think about building those specialist skills. And that's why I say the unshackling of the mindset has got to come into the picture. Don't just focus on 1 year. Let's focus on a 3-year path, okay? And when we focus on a 3-year path, can we facilitate the kind of experience that we're wanting to see? Because in the absence of that, what happens is people go in and sort of get experience, and then we start to have this salary war. So we have the parity between a competence level and a salary band is very out. So, often you look at a skill from India, the competence is way up here, the salary is way down here. In South Africa, unfortunately, you look at a competence level that sits down here and a salary band that sits up there. And so what we need to solve for is we need to flood, in inverted commas, flood the market with the right credentials, but with suitable work experience at the same time.
Yeah. And possibly a more realistic salary band.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and that's again another example of us all coming together to solve and to think a little bit outside of the box, And then, like I say, measurement is important. When you look at our skills development legislation, it was done, the thinking and the sentiment behind it, you couldn't get better. But now we've got to bring in this agility and this fast movement around what fit for purpose looks like. And that's a question that everybody's got to sit up and say, what does fit for purpose actually look like for us? And the interesting thing is, I often get a lot of people saying to me, Ursula, can you help us find these skills? Can you? And I say, but what you need to understand, your build factor is so much more important now because the skill and the talent is inside your business.
Yeah.
It's not always sitting over there,
Yeah. No,
and
I hear that often.
That mind shift, which also talks to the role of learning and development in organizations.
Exactly.
The role of how we tackle technical skills has also got to fundamentally shift. But we sit with the talent inside our organizations, and it's not always on the other side of the fence.
Thank you very much, Ursula. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Matthew. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. And as we always say, please subscribe to ITWeb TV.